You've likely learned in school about the Treaty of Tordesillas, the treaty brokered by the Pope in 1494 between Spain and Portugal that split the world between the two countries. Likely, you saw this map, which showed South America divided between areas given to Spain for colonial settlement and that given to Portugal. As you can see, Spain was given most of South America, with Portugal given a sliver of coastline. You've likely also seen a map showing what the world looks like today. Pan over to South America, and you'll probably notice that that tiny sliver given to Portugal does not at all represent what became the largest country in South America, and it speaks Portuguese. So, how did that tiny tip of initial Portuguese settlement expand to contain what was supposed to be the heart of Spain's continent? Guns, and the men who carried them, Bandeirantes. Their name came from the Portuguese word for flag carrier, and it was their exploits that were largely responsible for Brazil turning from a small coastal strip like Portugal itself, and its great push westward into South America. The area of the modern Brazilian coast was first claimed by Portugal in 1500, and, similar to later English settlement in North America, a series of individual colonies called capitancies were established along the coast. These were largely coastal communities based on plantations, with some inland expeditions to harvest valuable hardwoods or mineral wealth. Despite initial hardships, the colonies began to grow. The demand for labor for plantations and mining soon outstripped what local labor could provide. Slavery was seen as the answer to the labor shortage. With African slaves at that time being costly to import, some settlers saw inland slavery expeditions as the answer. These were the Bandeirantes. Hailing largely from southern Brazil's Sao Paulo region, Bandeirantes were organized in groups of explorers, and their expeditions were assigned by a wealthy sponsor. These groups could range anywhere from 50 to 5,000, and they would strike out into the unsettled interior of Brazil in a set area. Their focus was acquiring indigenous slaves, and to ease that aim, roads and outposts were built. After creating this rudimentary infrastructure, natives would be sought out and captured. Force was generally the most common and straightforward approach, with a group surprise attacking a village, taking what they wanted, and destroying the rest. Occasionally, though, more cunning was used. One of the great impediments to the Bandeirantes slaving expeditions were the Jesuit missionaries. The Jesuit mission was to convert the native people of the Americas to Christianity, and were known, almost uniquely among settlers at that time, for treating the natives with humanity and respect. Knowing their reputation, some Bandeirantes would dress as Jesuits to lure cautious natives out of hiding, and, only after they had let their guard down, would capture them. Later on in the 1600s, Bandeirantes would become so numerous and bold that they would simply attack Jesuit missions directly, where many natives had settled for protection. One raid in 1628 sacked 21 Jesuit villages, from which they captured 2,500 natives. Rivalry with the Jesuits came to a head in the middle of the century. While some Jesuit leaders, such as Antonio Ruiz de Montoya in 1631, would try to leave natives to the relative safety of neighboring Spanish colonies, one decided to fight. Standing his ground as the Bandeirantes approached, Jesuit Father Pedro Romero organized over 4,000 natives in defense of their homeland. In a battle in which 3,500 Bandeirantes attacked, the Jesuits and the natives were successfully able to defend themselves, halting raiding in the area. It was around this time that setbacks like Father Romero's resistance and the decline in the native population that Bandeirantes began to switch the focus of their expeditions. Although slave raids did continue to happen, later generations of Bandeirantes would start to search for other wealth. It was these exploratory expeditions that provided more permanence to Portugal's claim of the Amazon. As Bandeirantes began to chart the interior for their own gain, they also began to build up roads and trading posts that cemented Portugal's grip on South America. It was on these expeditions that mineral wealth was discovered, namely gold and silver. By the 1660s, the Portuguese government began to offer rewards for those who discovered gold and silver deposits. Bandeirantes shifted their focus to find these claims. Many would set out to try and collect the reward, and many were successful. Their successes in the south of Brazil began to draw the attention of those in the country's north, whose wealth largely depended on sugar plantations. The prospect of easy wealth drew their attention like it has many times in history, and today. By the 1690s, the Brazilian gold rush will be set in motion, thanks to the early exploits of the Bandeirantes. Close to 1 million settlers and slaves came to claim their fortune, filling out the lonely tracts first cut by the Bandeirantes with a Portuguese-speaking population. In time, Brazil would break away from Portugal, inheriting the borders won by their mother country. Within Brazil, the legacy of these wild explorers from the country's colonial past is largely based on a person's politics, whether it's more important to focus on the world they opened up, or what they did to that world once they got there. Outside of South America, the shift of Brazil's borders from a strip of coastal plantation towns to being the largest country on the continent is often not really paid attention to, seeming as inevitable as Russia's conquest of Siberia or the federation of Australia into one country. But someone had to first stake a claim to the hinterland before lines on the map changed. In Brazil's case, it was the Bandeirantes who had pushed the Pope's boundary from almost Atlantic to Pacific.